The day the Virgin Mary disappeared from Earth, what really happened? Imagine waking up to a world where every sign, every image, every trace of Mary simply vanished overnight. No explanation, no warning, as if she never existed. Billions of people around the globe woke up to this nightmare, and what happened next changed humanity forever. Stay until the end of this video, because what you're about to discover will shake everything you think you know about faith, science, and the destiny of our civilization. And make sure you hit that subscribe button right now, because this story goes deeper than anything you've ever heard before. It was an ordinary Tuesday morning, September 15th, when it began. But there was nothing ordinary about what was about to happen. At the Basilica of Our Lady of Guadalupe in Mexico City, the sacred tilma containing the miraculous image of the Virgin Mary was completely blank. Just empty fabric. Guards who had been stationed there overnight and swore they had seen the image just hours before stood frozen in absolute disbelief. The head of security, a man named Miguel Rodriguez, who had protected the shrine for 23 years, fell to his knees, sobbing uncontrollably. Millions of pilgrims who visited the sanctuary every year began flooding in, and when they saw what had happened, panic erupted like nothing the world had ever seen. But this was just the beginning of something far more terrifying. Within hours, reports started flooding in from every corner of the planet. In Fatima, Portugal, the statues of Our Lady stood completely featureless, as if they had been erased by an invisible hand. In Lourdes, France, where millions come seeking healing every year, the grotto where Mary appeared to Saint Bernadette was empty. The famous statue that had stood there for over a century showed no trace of her form. Aparecida in Brazil, Częstochowa in Poland, Medjugorje in Bosnia, Knock in Ireland, Walsingham in England. Every single place where Mary had been venerated for centuries was now empty, as if an invisible cosmic force had systematically erased her presence from every corner of Earth in a single moment. And it wasn't just the sacred sites. This is where it gets absolutely chilling. Paintings in museums around the world showed only empty backgrounds where the Mother of Christ once appeared. The Louvre in Paris reported that dozens of Renaissance masterpieces now displayed blank spaces where Mary had been painted. Michelangelo's Pieta in St. Peter's Basilica, one of the most famous sculptures in human history, showed only the empty arms of an invisible figure holding nothing but air. Thousand-year-old Byzantine icons in Orthodox monasteries, some dating back to the 4th century, became golden panels without form. Frescoes in ancient catacombs, mosaics in basilicas, stained glass windows in Gothic cathedrals. Every artistic representation of Mary across every culture and every century had vanished simultaneously. It was as if history itself was being rewritten before our eyes, as if she was being erased from the timeline of human civilization. The Vatican declared a state of spiritual emergency within 6 hours of the first reports. Pope Francis, visibly shaken and struggling to maintain composure, appeared on the balcony of St. Peter's Square before a crowd of over 500,000 people who had gathered in desperate confusion. He called for calm, for prayer, for faith, but even his voice trembled with uncertainty. He convened an extraordinary emergency meeting with cardinals, bishops, and religious leaders from every Christian denomination around the world. Orthodox patriarchs flew in from Constantinople, Russia, and Greece. Protestant leaders, Coptic Christians from Egypt, Syrian Christians, Ethiopian Christians. Everyone came together in what would become the largest interfaith gathering in modern history. The streets of Rome, filled with millions of desperate faithful, demanding answers that no one could provide. People wept openly in the streets. Some screamed at the sky. Others fell into catatonic states of shock. Prayer vigils spontaneously erupted in every major city on Earth. St. Peter's Square became a sea of candlelight that stretched for miles. Scientists, Theologians, philosophers, and world leaders were all summoned to try to explain the inexplicable. Within 24 hours, the world's top scientists from CERN, NASA, MIT, and Cambridge were assembled in Geneva. They examined the physical locations where images had disappeared. They ran spectral analysis, quantum measurements, temporal scans. Everything came back normal. There was no residue, no energy signature, no physical evidence of any intervention. It was as if Mary had never existed in these places at all. Dr. Sarah Chen, a leading quantum physicist from Stanford, stated in a press conference that defied all scientific understanding. What we're witnessing appears to be a retroactive alteration of physical matter across the entire planet, occurring simultaneously. This shouldn't be possible according to any known laws of physics. Was this a mass hallucination affecting billions of people? A coordinated digital attack somehow altering physical reality? Or something far more terrifying, something beyond the realm of human comprehension? News networks across every nation broadcast non-stop coverage for days. Regular programming was suspended worldwide. CNN, BBC, Al Jazeera, every major outlet had special 24-hour coverage. Social media platforms crashed repeatedly from the overwhelming traffic. Hashtags like "Where is Mary" and "Marian disappearance" trended globally with billions of posts. Theories exploded across the internet, ranging from alien intervention to divine judgment, from government conspiracy to quantum anomalies. Some claimed it was a test of faith, a way to separate true believers from those who relied only on physical proof. Others believed it was the beginning of the end times prophesied in the Book of Revelation. Some thought it was punishment for humanity's sins. The debates raged with an intensity that bordered on madness. Chaos erupted in major cities as people struggled to comprehend what was happening. In Mexico City, riots broke out near the Basilica. In Manila, Philippines, where Marian devotion runs incredibly deep, millions took to the streets in mourning processions. The economy began to collapse in several countries as people abandoned their jobs to pray or to protest. Stock markets crashed. International flights were grounded as pilots refused to fly, claiming they needed to be with their families during what might be the end of the world. Then, on the third day, something even stranger occurred. People who had experienced Marian apparitions throughout their lives, visionaries from Medjugorje, people who claimed to have seen her in their personal prayers, stigmatics, mystics, all began reporting the same recurring dream with identical details. In this dream, they saw Mary standing at the edge of reality itself, beyond a shimmering veil of pure white light that seemed to separate dimensions. She was watching humanity with tears streaming down her face, tears that fell like stars into an infinite void. She wasn't speaking, but somehow they all understood the same message. She wasn't gone. She had withdrawn. But why? What had humanity done to cause the Mother of God herself to turn away? A team of quantum physicists led by Dr. Chen proposed a theory so radical it was initially dismissed as insanity, but soon gained serious consideration. They suggested that collective human consciousness had the power to manifest and demanifest spiritual phenomena in physical reality. They called it the consciousness manifestation theory. For 2,000 years, billions upon billions of believers had held Mary's image in their hearts and minds, praying to her, loving her, venerating her, essentially anchoring her presence in our dimension through the sheer power of focused collective belief and devotion. But something had shifted in humanity's collective consciousness over recent decades. A critical mass of doubt, cynicism, materialism, and spiritual disconnect had weakened this anchor point. The theory suggested that when collective faith dropped below a certain quantum threshold, the manifestation could no longer sustain itself in physical form. Religious scholars initially rejected this, but then archaeological discoveries added another explosive layer to the mystery. A team excavating beneath the Temple Mount in Jerusalem discovered a hidden chamber that had been sealed for nearly 2,000 years. Inside, they found ancient texts written in Aramaic, the language Jesus spoke. These texts described a prophecy that had never been included in any biblical canon. It spoke of a time in the distant future when the mother would veil herself from the world, not as punishment, but as a mirror. Humanity would be forced to confront what remained when the divine feminine withdrew her protective presence. The text stated, "When the children forget the mother must step back so the children remember who they truly are." And as if fulfilling this ancient prophecy, everything began to fall apart. Wars that had been simmering suddenly exploded into full conflict. Border disputes in Eastern Europe turned into full-scale military operations. Tensions between nuclear powers escalated to levels not seen since the Cold War. Natural disasters intensified with terrifying frequency. Earthquakes struck in clusters. Hurricanes formed with unprecedented power. Wildfires raged across multiple continents simultaneously. Floods devastated regions that had been stable for centuries. It was as if the Earth itself mourned her absence. Climate scientists noted that the environmental catastrophes following the disappearance showed patterns that defied meteorological models, as if nature itself was responding to a spiritual void. Mental health crises skyrocketed. Suicide rates doubled within the first week. Hospitals were overwhelmed with people suffering from acute existential crises, panic attacks, and complete psychological breakdowns. Therapists and counselors reported that patients described feeling an inexplicable emptiness, as if something essential had been torn from the fabric of reality itself. Even people who had never been religious reported feeling this cosmic absence. But here's where it gets absolutely mind-blowing, and you need to pay close attention because this changes everything. 40 days after the disappearance, exactly 40 days which holds deep biblical significance, children around the world, regardless of their religious background, regardless of their culture or location, began drawing the same image. An image of Mary, but different, more radiant, more powerful, surrounded by symbols that looked like mathematical equations mixed with ancient sacred geometry. Children in Tokyo who had never heard of Christianity, children in remote Amazon tribes, children in atheist families in Scandinavia, all drawing the exact same image with the exact same symbols. When researchers collected thousands of these drawings and analyzed them, they discovered something that sent shockwaves through the scientific community. The symbols the children were drawing were actually advanced quantum mathematical formulas that described the relationship between consciousness and physical reality. Formulas that these children couldn't possibly know or understand. When asked how they knew what to draw, every single child said the same thing in their own language. "She showed me. She said she's coming back. But we have to be ready. We have to change. We have to remember how to love." Scientists began detecting unusual electromagnetic frequencies emanating from the exact locations where Mary had been most venerated throughout history. These frequencies formed complex patterns that, when analyzed, resembled human brainwave patterns during states of deep meditation, unconditional love, and transcendent prayer. It was as if the Earth itself was calling out for her return, as if the planet had become a giant consciousness emitting a signal into the cosmos. Dr. Michael Foster, a neuroscientist from Johns Hopkins, made a startling discovery. When he measured the collective brainwave patterns of groups engaged in prayer for Mary's return, their neural synchronization created field effects that could be measured hundreds of miles away. The more people prayed with genuine love and transformed hearts, the stronger the field became. It was scientific proof that consciousness was not confined to individual brains, but operated as a collective field that could influence physical reality. Religious scholars working around the clock discovered something profound in ancient manuscripts that had been overlooked for centuries. Hidden texts from early Christian mystics, Gnostic Gospels, Jewish Kabbalistic writings, Islamic Sufi poetry, even Buddhist and Hindu scriptures all contained references to this event. The disappearance had been prophesied across multiple religious traditions, not as an end, but as a transformation, a great awakening. Mary's withdrawal was meant to awaken humanity to its own spiritual responsibility and divine nature. We had become complacent, treating faith as mere ritual rather than actual transformation of the heart. We had turned religion into tribalism, into rules and judgment, into division and war. Her absence was the greatest teaching of all, a teaching that said the divine cannot be captured in images or controlled by institutions. The divine lives only where love lives. And then, on the 50th day, something miraculous happened that spread across every news channel on earth. In a small, forgotten village in rural Uganda, where a young girl named Amara had been caring for orphans affected by war with pure, selfless love, asking nothing in return, simply serving with her whole heart, the image returned. A statue in the tiny village chapel, one that had been blank like all the others, suddenly displayed Mary's form again. But she looked different. She appeared as an African woman, beautiful and radiant, and she was smiling. Within hours, another manifestation occurred. In a homeless shelter in Seattle, where volunteers had been serving the poor with genuine compassion, a painting of Mary on the wall reappeared. Then, in a hospital in Mumbai, where doctors and nurses had been working beyond exhaustion to save lives during a pandemic outbreak, an icon in the chapel restored itself. In a refugee camp in Syria where aid workers risked their lives daily, in a prison in Brazil where inmates had formed a circle of forgiveness and reconciliation, in a women's shelter in Australia where survivors of abuse were learning to trust again. Wherever genuine compassion, unconditional love, true service, and heartfelt transformation existed, her presence began to re-manifest. But here's what's absolutely crucial to understand. The images that returned weren't all the same. In Africa, she appeared African. In Asia, Asian. In Latin America, indigenous. In the Middle East, she appeared as she might have actually looked 2,000 years ago, as a Jewish woman from Nazareth. She was showing humanity, that she belongs to everyone, that the divine feminine transcends all human categories, all borders, all divisions. She was teaching us that we had made her too small by confining her to our limited cultural images. The truth that emerged is staggering and will change how you see everything. Mary never truly disappeared. We did. We disappeared into our egos, our divisions, our materialism, our tribalism, our hatred. We disappeared into our phones, our distractions, our selfish pursuits. We forgot how to truly see each other, how to truly love. Her vanishing was a cosmic intervention to wake us up, to shock us out of our spiritual amnesia, to remind us that the divine doesn't exist in images or statues or buildings, but in our actions, our love, our unity, our service to one another. Scientists and theologians now agree on something unprecedented in human history. Consciousness and spirituality are not separate from the fabric of physical reality, but are fundamental to it. We are not passive observers of the divine. We are co-creators with the divine. Mary's disappearance and return proved that heaven and earth are not separate realms, but intimately connected through the bridge of human consciousness, intention, and love. Quantum physics and ancient mysticism were saying the same thing all along. We just weren't listening. The world has changed since the return. Not everyone saw it. Not everyone learned the lesson. But enough people did. Enough hearts cracked open. Enough souls awakened. Churches and temples that had been empty for decades filled again, but with a different spirit. Not one of obligation or fear, but of genuine seeking and transformation. Interfaith dialogues flourished. People started actually living the teachings of love rather than just reciting them. Acts of kindness and service multiplied exponentially. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't universal. But something fundamental had shifted in human consciousness, and here's what they're not telling you on mainstream news. The manifestations continue to increase in places where love increases, and they continue to fade in places where hatred, division, and ego dominate. Mary has become a living barometer of humanity's spiritual state, a mirror showing us exactly where we are on our collective journey. She is teaching us in real time that the divine responds to the quality of our consciousness and the authenticity of our love. If this story moved you, if it opened your mind to possibilities beyond what you thought was real, if it challenged you to think differently about faith and reality and your own role in this cosmic drama, then smash that like button right now. Hit it hard, because this message needs to reach as many people as possible. Subscribe and turn on all notifications, because we're diving deep into mysteries that will transform how you see the world and your place in it. We're exposing truths that others are afraid to talk about. Share this video with someone who needs to hear this message today. Send it to that friend who's lost faith. Send it to that family member who's struggling. Send it to anyone who needs to remember that miracles are real and that we're all part of something far greater than ourselves. Drop a comment right now telling me what you think really happened. Was it a test, a warning, a punishment, or the greatest spiritual awakening humanity has ever experienced? Tell me how this story affected you. Tell me if you've ever experienced something miraculous that science couldn't explain. Your story might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. The answer to what really happened might just change everything you thought you knew about reality, about faith, about the nature of existence itself. Because ultimately, the disappearance of Mary wasn't about her leaving us. It was about us leaving ourselves. And her return isn't just about her coming back. It's about us remembering who we really are. Divine beings having a human experience capable of manifesting heaven on earth through the power of authentic love. I'll see you in the next video, where we're going deeper into unexplained phenomena that prove we're living in a reality far more mysterious and magical than we've been told. And remember, the divine is not out there somewhere in the sky. It's right here, right now, in every choice you make, in every act of love you choose, in every moment you decide to see the sacred in the ordinary. The question is, will you choose to see it? Will you choose to be part of the awakening? Or will you let this moment pass you by? The choice has always been yours. Tentar novamente o Claude pode cometer erros. Confira sempre as respostas. Sonnet 4.5